Welcome! I'm Vine, and today I have for you an overview of the Conflux faction from the Heroes of Might and Magic 3. It is the last neutral aligned faction and the last ninth town in the game, representing the Great Conflux, a coalition of elementalists and summoned elementals. This faction appeared in the Armageddon's Blade expansion, and for you to understand it, I need to tell you two stories. One of cosmological lore and the other of real lore. Since the latter is a sad one, let's start with the former first. The world of Enroth is not a naturally formed planet, but an artificial world created from scratch by the ancients and their technology. Though this wasn't a simple terraformation that we can witness in other games like Stellaris. Ancients drew upon energies from different dimensions to create the whole planet from scratch. Today, we know these energies as elemental magic and those dimensions as elemental planes. So, magic in this world has a partially technological origin. I say partially because this system is still quite mystical in nature, governed not by physics, but by elemental lords that are in essence gods of given elements, keeping the fantasy alive in science fantasy setting. Because of that connection, the elemental lords care for Enroth since it's partially their creation and are willing to send their forces to defend it from world-ending threats. The Great Conflux is one of instances of this, as elemental lords send their forces to stop the Kregan invaders from setting this world on fire with the Armageddon's Blade. They partially succeeded, since the blade was secured and placed in the hands of Gelu for safekeeping, until the pale knife-ear destroyed the world himself. Well played, Conflux. Well played. So, time for the second story, from real life. Because you see, the publisher of Heroes of Might and Magic, 3DO, was a gravely mismanaged company. When devs were working on the first expansion for the game, they were planning to introduce the Forge faction, a cybernetic town that will bring the science fiction elements into the light and continue the plot from the RPG Might and Magic 7. You may have already seen its good or bad interpretations in various modes. 3DO, in its infinite stupidity, published this information spoiling the fun and showed the world studio-only concept arts, including the bare tits Naga tank. This triggered toxic pseudo-fans that played only the Heroes spin-offs, ignoring the original Might and Magic series, sparking the hate campaign towards the devs with death threats included. Of course, the morality protectors also were activated, seeing the Naga tank titty drop, because in the late 90s games were only for the children, and God forbid anyone showed naked breasts in a video game. Thus, the Forge was scrapped and devs were forced to use a faction with plot planned for the second expansion. This is why Conflux feels unbalanced and out of place, as it was a rushed product, released under pressure. I know that this story sounds like a random game scandal from 2020s, but over 25 years ago we had the same issues, proving that stupid publishers and normie tourists always were a cancer on the gaming industry. Ironically, today the Ubisoft is the new 3DO, Heroes-only players increased in numbers, and we are at the brink of the Olden Era release that tries to tap into the nostalgia market by bastardizing the lore from the Might and Magic 8. So the history repeats itself again. But going back to the Conflux, now that you all know both stories, you will understand why mechanically this faction is like it is. Conflux is fundamentally broken and thus absolutely overpowered to the point of being banned in multiplayer. And there are 4 reasons for this. First, Might heroes, the planeswalkers with guaranteed offense or tactics skill, and magic heroes, the elementalists with guaranteed elemental magic skill. Second, 2 overpowered special buildings: Magic University, that teaches all of the elemental magic skills, making all spellcasting heroes even more overpowered, and the notorious artifact merchants that allow the purchase of the new artifacts each month. Third, Aurora Borealis, the Grail structure that adds all spells to the Mage Guild, again making all spellcasting heroes even more overpowered. And fourth, completely unbalanced units, with basic elementals being all around 3.5 unit power level due to being previously neutral creatures, also phoenixes with double growth. But to elaborate on that, let us move to the units at hand. On the first level we have the Pixies and Sprites, the weakest units of this level with HP so low that even being cannon fodder is hard for them. But upgraded, they prevent enemy retaliation, which is something. They are somehow connected to the Lord of Air, despite being one of 2 creatures of this town from planet Enroth. Also, they are fantasy hookers that live in the lanterns instead of standing under them all day. On the second level, sit Air Elementals and Storm Elementals. As I said before, despite occupying the second level in the castle, they have stats of 3rd and a half level creatures. On top of that, they count as non-living, being immune to mind spells and morale, and have corresponding elemental resistances, vulnerabilities, and 200% bonus damage dealt to elementals of opposing element. On upgrade, they cast protection from air and gain the ability to shoot, which makes them even more overpowered. On the third level, we have water elementals and ice elementals. Very similar units to air ones, but with water as their element and a position around their actual level of power. Their stats are slightly different, but skills are the same type down to the ability to shoot after the upgrade, which makes them as useful as their predecessors. On the fourth level, Conflux gives us fire elementals and energy elementals, a third level creature that was put on fourth level, thus making it trash. Of course, they are non-living elementals that are resistant to fire, vulnerable to frost, and deal 200% damage to water elementals. Upgraded, they gain the ability to phase jump, giving them the effect of flying, which in theory can be useful with their speed, but in practice is not. The fifth level is where we get the earth elementals and magma elementals. Again, elemental of 3.5 level with elemental skills sitting as a unit on 5th level, which makes them a bad unit. Their gimmick is being tanks, so they at least can shield the shooters. Honestly, this whole basic elements unbalance would be fixed if the shooting ones were moved to the 4th and 5th level, since the importance of ranged attacks would counterweight the 3rd level stats. But due to the town being crushed, we got the broken elemental line as is. Thank you, Fridio! On the 6th level, we get the Psychic Elementals and Magic Elementals. Here the situation changes, as these elementals were created to be a 6th level creatures and thus have adequate stats to their level. Moreover, besides being non-living, they prevent enemy retaliation and attack all hexes around them, but deal only 50% damage to the creatures immune to mind spells. So, they are non-living gang. This changes after the upgrade, when they start to flash their bodies to deal magic damage, which deals only 50% damage to the creatures completely immune to magic, and those are only black dragons and themselves. So that definitely gets them on Balance Offenders list. They are unique monsters that appeared in Heroes 3 only, but they don't break any lore, as exotic elements appear in the Might and Magic universe, alongside magic outside basic 4 elements, with Mind being one of them. And finally, on the 7th level are Firebeards and Phoenixes. Stat-wise, mostly unimpressive. Skill-wise, they have a 2-hex breath attack, immunity to fire spells, can fly, and upgraded respawn in small numbers. But someone had the bright idea of making them have double growth that is also doubled both by the castle and grail, giving them max +6 growth not counting the map dwellings, which is insane. On top of that, phoenixes have the highest speed in the game, giving us the first move advantage in every battle, which, combined with the growth, is the main strike for the multiplayer ban of this faction. As for the lore, firebeards and phoenixes live mainly on the plane of fire, but don't come from there. They are creatures from Enroth that were imprisoned on the plane hundreds of years ago for their power, so the Great Conflux is actually a homecoming for them. Time for my opinion, as that was all relevant info about the faction. It makes me sad. I don't mind it being unbalanced or colorful. This town to me just represents the beginning of the franchise downfall. All because of a bad publisher and heroes-only players that think lore from the main Might and Magic series is less canonical than mods, which in consequence completely derailed the plot of the games and led directly to the Day of Reckoning that destroyed the world which I've saved 2 times in the RPGs for nothing. But, well, at least we have a pure fantasy game now, right? Anyway, what's your opinion about this faction? Write it in the comments, remember to visit channel's Discord, and see you later!